Hi, I welcome you all on a channel involving Mind of Compliance by Rajat Gupta. See, my objective on this channel is to promote the culture of compliance, which is very much been prominent across the country, which has been a major concern for the countries across the world. So my objective is to share the knowledge, to have more understanding around the evolving landscape in the compliance field, particularly the financial crime compliance. See, in a recent survey which have been published and they have highlighted the gray areas, which means the regulator across the world, their expectations and what the financial institutions are not able to meet those expectations. That's been a major concern. So the first and foremost thing which has come across is the targeted financial sanction. See, we all the financial institutions across the world are confused at times. The people into the compliance department of those institutions are at times confused. So we have to have a clear understanding around it. The first thing is the any country which is a member of the United Nations has to follow the United Nations sanction program, which is called as targeted financial sanction. That is the mandatory sanction program which all the institutions of the member state of the United Nations have to follow invariably. The second comes is the wherever you are working, let's say if I were working in India, UAE, UK, US, or any part of the world, or in any other country, then you are supposed to follow the local list of that particular country, be it a terrorist list, be it a sanctioned person list, whatsoever list they are generating, that is also to be mandatorily followed by the institutions which are working under the umbrella of the regulators of that particular country. So this is mainly concern. Rest any other sanction programs, like if you say of US OFAC, EU HMT of UK and the other sanctions program, those are depending upon your risk appetite on your own internal policies, and they are more of an unilateral sanctions. So let's say, for an example, you are working in an organization and you find any target which is against the OFAC. So what had happened, the people are freezing the fund of that particular customer and sending the FFR reports or to the regulators and all those things. No, that's a wrong approach, because fund freeze report, which is FFR report, is to be filed if the TFS target has been found for the UN list. For if your organization is following the OFAC program, a U program or HMT program, and you come across any of the target in OFAC and not in EU, then you can file SAR or STR, but you should not be filing the FFR report, and you will not freeze the funds. But because that's a unilateral thing, that your organization has followed, that we will follow the OFAC, because majority of the financial institutions, those who are involved in the dollar remittances, they have to follow the OFAC guidelines and all those things. But that is different than the targeted financial sanctions. So we must not mix them. So that's the clear thing. And then there is one thing called there are two things in the targeted financial sanction. One is FFR, fund freeze report, that you have to, if you come across any of the person, entity, or any other natural person which is like it under the TFS vessel or something like that, then you have to immediately freeze all the assets across all the accounts. exist within your financial institution, and you should not let those funds be utilized by that targeted entity or a person or whatsoever. So that's the immediate, and then you have to report it to the authority as per the guideline, which is as of now is 5 days. Within 5 days, you have to find the report and all those things. Similarly, there is second report which is called a partial name match. So, if in case there could be the possibility that there is a match which is partial in nature, that also you have to suspend the transactions and everything for that customer, and then you have to report through PNMR report to the authority. However, the foremost thing which has come across in this PNMR report and which I find is difficult for the financial institution, because there could be so many name matches. There is a population of around 8 billion and there could be so many name matches and all those. But under these circumstances, internally, to come across to this issue or to find a solution around it, we internally should have some kind of a threshold. Let's say if a particular person, threshold of the means percentage, means if the name match is 80% and above, then only we will go for PNMR. Or if it is lesser, we can discount it at our own hand, or we can have a more detailed policies or internal policies around it, or you can, depending upon your risk appetite, depending upon the local regulations and all those things, you can decide upon the threshold. But in general practice, people across the world I have seen keep 80% or something like that, but that still depends upon the individual organization. So, but threshold is required. If you do not have any threshold for such things, then you would be reporting unnecessarily any match for that matter, or even the 50%, 60%, you will say it's a partial match and you may be reporting it to the authorities and all. Then the authorities will also have tagged up list of these PNMR and all those things. It will further delay their investigation, it will further delay the outcome, and in the meanwhile the customer may suffer for this particular time. He or she may not be a target, but just being in a partial name match, they are suffering. It might impact their business and all those things. So nowhere the regulators across the world, nowhere in the world, any of the governments or any, they do not want the business to impede. So you have to be rational around it. We compliant people should not be overzealous in contemplating any such things. We should be rational, we should be pragmatic, we should have clear understanding. So that's been the first report on the transaction financial sanctions in the recently conducted survey. The second thing, there is a review, there is a survey around these suspicion transaction report or suspicion activity report. So what are the outcomes of it, where we are lacking? See, the first and foremost thing, we must understand that the transaction monitoring and the ongoing due diligence is the heart of compliance. It is the core of the compliance. And all the things, the STR majority of the time stems from this, from the ongoing due diligence and the continuous transaction monitoring, be it manual, be it automated, but whatsoever, the majority of your STR is coming out of it. So one thing which has been missing across the industry, what as per my observation, and I have taken the observation of other erudites of this industry, is that the enterprise-wide risk assessment has not been so comprehensive. The enterprise-wide risk assessment is like an engine. That should be the kind of under that policy, the enterprise-wide risk assessment should be the guiding tool. It should be a gear for your compliance to have a robust transaction monitoring, to have a robust ongoing due diligence. Because under this, in the enterprise-wide risk assessment, you should have clear understanding about your risk appetite, your risk tolerance. You have to have KRIs, key risk indicators defined. You should have a key performance indicator defined underneath, and then you should have a study around your type of customer. You have gold customer, you have petrochemical customer, you have other customer. What all risk they pose to you, and then the industry risk. Then it should have an understanding about the national risk assessment, and all those things should also be incorporated into the enterprise-wide risk. That's very important. And simultaneously, your enterprise-wide risk assessment should always have typology assessment. The typologies across the financial crime. It should be product specific. Cross-border payment, your mobile services, your internet services, your ATM services, your other private banking services, your other financial advisory services, and all those things. So you should have those typology. So every segment will have a different typology. So you should have a typology assessment incorporated into your enterprise-wide risk segment. Yeah, which typologies are most relevant? That should also come from national risk assessment. See, national risk assessment is a broader framework. So you should, when you will going to do the risk assessment of your typology for your organization, you will be specific to your organization, which is missing. Because from the typology comes the risk, your scenario which you are going to deploy across your transaction monitoring. So your enterprise-wide risk assessment, it will act as a kind of an engine, will be the main book, or will be the main report from where everything will stem. Your scenarios, your ongoing due diligence, your risk-based approach, your residual risk, your risk appetite statement, your KRIs, KPI, everything will be defined over there. And from there, you have to further granularize it for each and every operation, business line, and all those things. So what has been happening now? The risk, we are not getting the typology assessment done. We are just applying this scenario which are standard across the industry. We have not done it specifically for our own organization. Those scenarios may not be so relevant to me, may not be relevant for my operations. For example, I may not be giving a private banking services, but if I have applied certain scenarios which are even not relevant to my product offering, so that means they are unnecessarily increasing the number of alerts in my transaction monitoring. However, they are of no use to me. Further, so this has been a major concern. I have been talking to so many industry people, and I find that enterprise-wide risk assessment has not been widely considered during the development of the scenario. I think your 60 to 70% of the total scenario should be coming out of your enterprise-wide risk assessment, or 30 to 40% could be from industry standards. Because unless you have a specific alerts, there is so much of false positive, which is of no use. They are unnecessarily burdening your transaction monitoring team. And yes, the second thing which has come across is the organizations, the financial institutions are unnecessarily burdening their transaction monitoring team with some or the other work. Transaction monitoring team should be exclusively working for transaction monitoring. They should be exclusive. They should be exclusively doing investigation. They should be exclusive. Only then you can spot the risk coming to your organization. If you keep on burdening them, with a false positive or other works, particularly in a smaller organization where they don't have a segregated team, they burden their teams. They unnecessarily burden. So this is the responsibility of the CCO or the MLRO in the organization to see that my transaction monitoring team remain exclusive. They shouldn't be involved in any other task and all those things. Because unless then your financial crime compliance, whatsoever you do, will never be appropriate, will never be abreast with the time. So that's the most important. So that's the survey has been very candid about that risk assessment of the typologies, the generic So what happens when the false positive increases? So what happens? People starts to discount the alerts with the generic comments, because the false positive there, they are not getting the time to investigate. So that's been the case, and the people are to be skilled enough, they should be trained enough. For anyone and anyone cannot come into the transaction monitoring. Transaction monitoring shouldn't be taken so lightly. It requires continuous training, it requires continuous upskilling, it requires continuous monitoring. The system should have a below the line testing, that there shouldn't be a much false negative, there shouldn't be much false, it has to be an optimal level. So that's been the primary responsibility. The generic, there is no proper documentation of the policies, procedures, how the SPR will be filed, how the means what would be the procedure to discount the alerts, the policies around the TBML alerts, the TBML discounting of alerts. I have come across so many people, they are taking all the documentation from the customer, but they are not doing the TBML analysis. TBML analysis is not just a vessel tracking or something like that. It's about mainly how would you catch hold of the under invoicing and an over invoicing in that. So that's been the part of the survey. So, and then you have to have you should have an understanding about your ongoing level of your ongoing due diligence. In ongoing due diligence also, then you should have a feedback loop. So your transaction monitoring should be continuously giving feeds to your ongoing due diligence. And ongoing due diligence, we have to re-evaluate the entire activity of the customer and what all risk ratings have to be, and the risk ratings have to be dynamic in nature. It should be constantly moving. It shouldn't be like after 6 months or 1 year I would be moving my customer. No, it should be dynamic. Your core banking should be linked with your risk rating system. So it should continuously be moving depending upon the relationship, depending upon the product, depending upon the remittances and whatsoever customer is utilizing. So this has been the two major surveys which has come across in the recent week, and so I just wanted to highlight very few of them which are most relevant to the industry and where we are doing the mistakes. So I wish each and every one that you should listen to this video and try what we can do within our organizations, and we should improve upon it. And that's been my endeavor through this video, that I should be able to communicate the knowledge, I should be able to share the knowledge, and I should be able to see that how I could contribute towards more and more towards this financial crime compliance. So with this, I finish for today's session, and I request each and everyone to please subscribe, listen, share these videos. These are going to be very useful for each and every one, those who are involved in the financial crime compliance. Thank you very much, and all the best, and enjoy your coming week. Bye-bye.